Okay, hello everyone. So just let me start kind of formally. So today we have Oybek Kurbanov, and he will be talking about classroom assessment. Oybek has been an English language teacher and English language specialist for over 20 years. He has MA in TESOL from the University of Lancaster in the UK. He has taught at schools, colleges, universities in Uzbekistan and Saudi Arabia. He participated in several educational projects, in local, international, and regional projects as a curriculum and materials designer, teacher trainer, and test developer. So his professional fields of interest include language teaching and assessment. Oybek is the Hormy alumni, as I said, and he did his MA in TESOL in the UK. So how do you want to deal with the questions, Oybek? Do you want to deal with them at the end of your presentation or as you go?
Yes, I would prefer that our colleagues type their questions in the chat box, and we can deal with them at the end of the presentation as much as the time allows.
So if you're afraid that you will forget your question, you can write in the chat box, and then we will have a look at them, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Nadira. Hello, everyone. As Nadira said, my name is Oybek, and today in this session, we'll be talking about classroom assessment. First of all, I would like to thank Nadira and her team for arranging these webinars, which are really good opportunities for us to stay connected as the network of teachers, and also to work on our professional development. So thank you and kudos to you, Nadira, and your team. I will let you know the exact focus of our today's discussion in a moment, but first, I would like all of us to have a look at these four different. So how do I move the slide to? How do I move to the next slide?
This is just your computer.
Okay.
Yes, as usual.
Excellent. Yeah. So. A little task for the audience, ladies and gentlemen, have a look at these four different exams, and in the chat box, write what do you think is common for these four exams. And Nadira, how do I see the chat box? It looks like...
it's a bit difficult to pull it out. You'll have to go to back Zoom. Or, have to, I think, exit your...
or maybe...
if you hover, the panel will pop up, the Zoom panel, and then you will go to chat. It keeps disappearing when you're presenting, so that's the downside. No, you cannot see it still?
No.
Okay, I'll do you want me to read it for you then?
Yes, if you can do that.
Yes. So say they are for school leavers, except SAT. I'm not familiar with others. It's a type of exams. They may be graduating exams. For school leaving. Yeah, most of them, the answers was school leaving exams. Proficiency test. Enrolling for higher education institution, maybe all are final leavers exam.
Excellent. Yes, all of these answers are correct. With the exception of SAT, all three exams, GCSE and A-level exams in the UK, high school leaving written exam in Norway, international baccalaureate exam worldwide, are school living exams, and SAT is the exam administered by College Board in the US. It's a university admission exam. It's slightly different from school living exam. Students, after leaving the school, they have to take this exam to be able to enroll at the university. You are correct. Most of them are proficiency exams. There is one more commonality between these four exams, and it is related to COVID-19, the current situation. The commonality is all of these four exams have been cancelled. So the UK government has decided to cancel GCSE and A-level exams, and United States has cancelled SAT exam for April and May, and the discussion are going on about June exams, whether it is worth administering them in the current situation with coronavirus, in the lockdown situations. Norway has cancelled the high school living written exam. And they said the school graduates don't have to take this exam, and they will get their grades from the continuous assessment, which counts for 80% of their final grade anyway. The International Baccalaureate exam is the exam to international schools which have accreditation with this organization. They also decided to cancel their exams worldwide. So because of this COVID-19, when these governments decided and these organizations decided to cancel their exams, there is a question: how will students get their grades from schools? How will they be able to continue into university or work placement? And most of these governments, like Norway and UK, they adopted a very important and timely policy allowing the schools, secondary schools and high schools, to give students grades based on the continuous assessment and quizzes that students took during the academic year 2019-20, this academic year. And this has sparked some discussions. Parents were asking, will the grades given by teachers be reliable? Will there be anything to minimize the bias towards students when grading their work based on their classroom participation? These discussions were happening in Norway, in the UK, in India, all over the world. And while reading the articles on these discussions, I thought probably the topic for our today's conversation in this Zoom call can be the comparison of the validity theory derived from large-scale language testing or large-scale assessment in general to the practices of classroom assessment that we as teachers implement with our students. So the focus of our discussion will be on comparing the classroom assessment practices with the validity theory that derives from large-scale assessment and language testing in particular. So we will be looking at this comparison through the perspectives of the context, how the context in classroom assessment different from large-scale testing context, from the perspective of tasks and items that we bring into our classrooms to assess our students. And we'll be comparing these to the large-scale tasks and items. We will also be looking at how the role of the assessor in large-scale testing is different to the role of the assessor in the classroom. And we will also talk about the differences in design and evaluation of tasks in classroom assessment versus large-scale language testing. So to start with the context. sorry, to start, before we start, I just wanted to suggest that from time to time, I will be posing a question or a request for you to share something from your own experience. And if you can share your answers on the chat box, Nadira or myself will select one of the respondents and we will ask them to unmute themselves and share their perspective on that aspect within 1 minute or so. All right? Good. Let's start. Well, talking about the context. In large-scale testing, the context of the test is anything that is not relevant to, anything that's not relevant to the test itself. It is the venue where the test is being administered. It is invigilators. It is the temperature. It is lighting. It is time of the day. It's day of the week, and so on. And in large-scale testing, these variances or these aspects of the context should not be influencing the outcome of the test. That's why in language testing literature it's called construct irrelevant variance. So if, let's say, for example, if the temperature is too high and if the air conditioning does not work in the test venue, then there is a chance that students may find it difficult to sit a 4 or 5 hour test, and this can influence their grade. And it should not be influencing. This is how context is considered in large-scale testing. The context should not be influencing the outcomes of the test. However, in the classroom, the context is everything that is supposed to support learning. Like, for example, our classroom assessment practices include a lot of tasks and activities, different tasks, different types of tasks and activities based on which we assess our students' learning. Students also work with each other in group tasks, and sometimes we give them individual tasks. So there's a the mode of interaction is different, and also in our classroom, students communicate with each other based on which we assess their learning and decide what we need to do next in the next lesson. And during the course of our week or term or academic year, and even in an isolated lesson, students and teacher build relationships based on the interactions with each other. And these relationships are supposed to inform learning and support learning. And that's why in classroom assessment, context is everything that is supposed to support learning, and context is very important and relevant to the construct of classroom assessment. Now, this is it from me. Now I have a question to you, ladies and gentlemen. What other aspects of classroom context are directly relevant to the assessment of learners? Please type your answers in the chat box, and I would like to ask Nadira to pick one of the respondents, and we will ask that person to share her perspective with everyone by unmuting themselves. Nadira, unfortunately, I cannot see any comments. Would you be able to share some with me?
No, no. Could you please just try again? So can you please go to the Zoom?
Okay. So I have to exit the screen, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, just you have to try to pull it out first. Don't know why people cannot see it.
Okay,
Where is the Zoom?
I'm on Zoom, I guess.
Okay, you see then. Yeah, hover over your screen some way, so you should be able to see the panel. No, it's not coming.
Is it
At the top or at the bottom? So if you hover, it will appear the panel.
Okay.
No, just on your screen. No. Okay.
There's a black panel that shows how I can mute and unmute myself.
Okay, and that's it. You don't have chat one?
No, I don't see the chat one.
Okay.
Sorry for my technical.
No, it's not only you. It's just I wonder. I don't know how it works. Okay. Maybe I have to make it host to. I don't know. I don't know even how it works. Okay. No problem. So we don't have actually comments, only Sardor Pulatev. Okay, no, we have two. Sardor Pulatev asked, could you please go back for a second? I guess he wants you to go. Yes, I think here. Okay. And then Kamola Murat Kasimova is saying maybe culture level L1.
So can we ask Kamala Murat Kasimova to unmute herself and probably share her perspective on how culture and other aspects can be relevant to classroom assessment situation? If that's fine with Kamala.
Kamola?
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello,
I'm sorry, it's evening, right? Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Kamala.
You want me to share my answer, right? To define.
Yes, just tell us how do you think culture and other aspects that you mentioned can be relevant to classroom assessment situation?
Okay. So as you mentioned, there are different factors that influence to the context in the classroom assessment. And to my view, to my mind, the culture, L1, like native language of learners and their level, they're also the main factors. As I think, as for me, I mean, when I design my classroom assessment tasks, I have to, as an educator and a teacher, I have to focus on these factors, like how to make it more clear.
So you take into account the level of your students, yeah, and the culture, their background.
Yes, the background, the level, and some more different factors. Because, for example, if you remember last time, Erkin, when he was presenting assessing grammar, there were several questions on the on assessing the background knowledge, which are not related to the context. And the same can be with the culture. I mean, there can be some questions or assessment tasks that learners are not aware with the information provided in there. So that's why I think it's important to take into consideration these different factors to make the classroom assessment more effective And to provide positive pushback, we have different factors to focus on. I'm not sure whether I could clearly define what I mean, but still.
And I agree with you, Kamala, because when administering, when bringing tasks and activities to students into our classrooms, we take into account the students' background, the culture, language level, and all other factors. And because we use these tasks to generate the students' response, to get them interact and produce language, and engage with the language. As we do this, we constantly keep assessing the learning.
Right.
And all of these aspects are very much relevant to the context of the classroom. And if you compare it to large-scale testing situation, like for example, for IELTS test or for Uzbekistan's university entrance test, the culture, the background should not be influencing the student's response. That's one of the main principles in language scale testing.
That's right. I can give an example from my real life. Right now, I'm in the USA as an international scholar. I'm observing several courses in Wisconsin University. And for me, sometimes it's hard to catch or understand the context of the course because I'm not the part of this culture.
Okay.
You see? So this is kind of not a problem, but still it causes some gaps in my understanding because I'm not the part of this culture. I'm not part of this, like, let's say, religion. There are different factors that can influence.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can I also jump in? Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like, there shouldn't be any, for example, culture sensitive topics, right, in the classroom assessment, right? For example, some controversial topics that are against the students' culture, right?
Right.
That, you know, might be kind of off topic for them, right? Then they would be, it will be really difficult for them to engage with the task, right? If they kind of really don't agree with something, right? Can be against their religion or against their mentality and tradition, etc. Right?
Definitely. Yeah. This is what I wanted to say.
Actually. Yes, that's right.
Yes, thank you, Nadrapa.
Yeah, no, thank you. And therefore, I think our webinars are also a kind of good place, you know, because there are so many international webinars held nowadays, but not all of them are relevant to Uzbekistan context, right? So therefore, I think our webinars are kind of context specific, and therefore I hope that our participants are finding it useful.
I want to share one more thing. Once, I do not remember, one of the international scholars, when they visit our university, there was a question, what do you think, what is the best educational system in the world? Which country has the best educational system? And the answer was, there is no, because each educational system, or we can say even the assessment method, is relevant in the context itself. If you take any system and bring to Uzbekistan, it cannot work as well and as productive as it is working in any other foreign countries, because there are different factors that can influence, like the same culture, language, religion, tradition, etc.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, Kamala, thank you very much for your input into the discussion of how context in classroom assessment is important as opposed to large-scale testing situation. Right, we will move to the next aspect, which is tasks and items. So you have probably read that and you know, from as a student, as a test taker, as a teacher, large-scale tests usually tend to have a lot of tasks and items in their test papers. The principle is the more the merrier, because the bigger the number of questions are, the more reliable that test is considered. Of course, there are other things to consider, but usually these test papers tend to have quite a lot of questions there. And also the types of these questions, items, and tasks has to vary. There have to be tasks of different types. Yes, our university entrance tests in Uzbekistan have only multiple choice questions, but if you look at some other international examinations, they try to have different types of tasks. It can be gap fill, it can be open-ended questions, it can be matching, it can be paragraph completion, matching headings to paragraphs, you name it, a variety of different items. And one of the principles in large-scale testing is that the response to one question should not be influenced by the response to the next question or the question that is coming before it, or to any other question in the exam. This is called stochastic independence in testing literature, which is quite different from the classroom situation, which I will be talking about shortly. And also all these tests, be it IELTS, Universal Entrance Test, TOEFL, or SAT, or GMAT, they are conducted over a short period of time. It can be 1 hour, it can be 3 hours. Some tests go as long as 5 or 6 hours, and that's it. And the purpose of these tests is to collect pieces of information from students' responses, add them together, and report the outcome as a grade or a letter. It can be A, B, F, D, or whatever, or a very short description of the student's performance, which is very different from classroom assessment situation. Firstly, in classroom assessment, we don't need many tasks. It can be one task divided into several stages. And while students perform on these tasks, we can, as teachers, we can make judgments whether where a student needs more support, how much he has progressed, and what we need to do in the next lesson or next week in our course. And also, tasks are very much interlinked with each other in the classroom, which is very different from stochastic independence principle in large-scale testing. The tasks are built on each other, and they are supposed to create the environment where learning is continuous and is built on the learning that happened before. And also, activities in classroom assessment happen over a period of time. It can be one lesson, it can be a week, it can be a month, a term, an academic year. So it doesn't have to be specific to 3 or 4 hours. And sometimes we know that as teachers, we know that based on the assessment that we carried out in the class, we can return to the same activity again and do it with students with a slightly different focus if there is a need for it. Now, there is a task for you, ladies and gentlemen. In the chat box, share any classroom activity that you have used recently and you think was very successful with your students. Obviously, you most probably will be looking at the time before COVID-19 lockdown. So if you can share it on the chat box. And again, I will ask Nadira to help me with looking at the chat box and probably inviting one of our respondents to share her or his perspective with the audience. If you don't want to type your long response, just in the chat box.
Yeah, we have.
In the chat box.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes,
good. Yeah,
we have some. Yes, jigsaw reading, PPP. I don't know what it means. auction game, TPR, brainstorming. Anything else, guys? You can continue. PowerPoint presentation. Okay, resume. Okay, good. Dictagloss. Okay. Role play. PPT. It's, I guess, PowerPoint presentation. Case study. Board game. Can you see that?
Yes, I managed to find it.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Some colleagues use the platform to share the listening activities with their students, or even running dictation, and chain drills. Puzzles, theaters, a range of different classroom activities that our colleagues found very successful with their students. Now, there was a response about Dictagloss. Who did it come from? The colleague who shared, who told that they use Dictagloss. Can you please unmute yourself and tell us more about the activity that you did, the Dictagloss activity, and tell us why you think it was successful as the assessment tool? Yakut, yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Actually, I teach listening lesson at my university, and my students usually complain that they cannot hear all the words. They don't. They wanted to learn more about listening techniques and so on. And I have found out like a Dictagloss, like I put a recording and I ask them like a part of the recording to write down the whole words, the whole sentences they heard. And in the following way, I just do it like a assessment, like who can do more noting, that student will get a kind of higher marks. And as many words, as many correct sentences, as higher marks they will get. And it was kind of game, but at the same time, it was very engaging for my students. They really interested in they in the following way, like by the end of the course, they noticed that they can their listening is improved. And even on the way when they hear the songs, they just said to me that even on the way when they hear the songs, that they try to imagine what words I use it, and they try to find the words that they cannot understand. They just go and find the lyrics, and in a following way they improve their listening. Thus, it is very interesting for my students and for assessment as well. But it's not like a summative assessment. It was like a formative assessment. I use it in my daily classes, not for summative assessment.
That's it. In traditional language testing literature, just assessment literature in general, the classroom assessment is more geared towards formative assessment, as they say, as they call it in traditional assessment terminology. And Yakut, from what you shared, I can see that there are several elements that you mentioned in the description of your classroom activity, the Dictagloss as the assessment tool. Firstly, the students were engaged. That takes us into the context discussion. So the engagement of students and also the interaction between them, and also you were able to judge whether students' listening is progressing or not based on this activity. So the tasks are very important in classroom assessment. Thank you very much, Yakut. If you don't mind, we will move to the next slide. Thanks a lot. Now, the next dimension in our discussion will be the role of the assessor. Who assesses students? In large-scale testing, to ensure the objectivity and to minimize any bias approach to scoring, in many cases, machine-based scoring is implemented, like in the example of university entrance tests in Uzbekistan. But in the cases where the human assessors are involved in marking students' papers, it is very important that assessors should not know the candidates. Sometimes the students' papers are coded so that assessors do not know the student's name, so that students do not influence, this familiarity with students do not influence the assessment procedure. And also in large-scale testing, the personal and contextual factors are minimized so that the student's background does not influence the assessor's judgment. Oh, this student comes from a part of the world where they were suffering. These kind of discussions or considerations are not allowed in large-scale testing. However, the situation with classroom assessment is somewhat different. The teacher is obviously familiar with students. In many cases, teachers know quite a lot of information about the students' backgrounds, how they feel, what the student's background is in terms of their culture, their language level, and so on, as it was mentioned a bit earlier. And there is also a lot of teacher-learner interaction. Whereas in large-scale testing, the assessor or interlocutor is prescribed with very strict rules on how much interaction she or he can have with the test candidates. In the classroom situation, the teacher and learner interaction is unlimited. And as teachers, we can come back to each learner as many times as we want and as the student needs during the course of one classroom assessment procedure. And very importantly, the classroom assessment is based on the teacher's decision about what to do next in the course or in the lesson. As Yakut shared with us, after a dictogloss activity, she observed that students' listening has developed. Probably for the next lesson, she will bring a slightly more challenging text to get students exposed to. So this is about the decision of a teacher about what to do next. Now, the floor to you, dear colleagues. Think of a continuous assessment you implemented in your recent classes. How did your findings change the learning and teaching? Again, we'll go to chat box. Please share your perspectives, and I will ask one of our colleagues to tell the group what they think. So Dila is saying that she uses portfolio assessment, progress tests, yeah, as continuous assessment. Jigsaw reading is coming again. Shahla Khan says by tests, and I think it's my guess that these can be end of term or progress tests. So Kamala is saying that continuous assessment has the capacity to change the syllabus. And one of the changes in the learning and teaching was providing feedback and comments on students' performance. Yeah. Mamura is saying she used Socrative tests. And Sardar uses teamwork activities to improve interaction between students. Now, I would like to ask Mamura Yusupova, if you don't mind, can you please tell us how did your findings from Socrative test change the learning and teaching in your classroom? Mamura, would you like to share with us? Okay, we'll move to the next person then. Yeah, I think there was Durdona Karimova shared with us that providing feedback and comments on students' performance changes learning and teaching. Durdona, would you mind sharing with us?
Yes, of course. Hello,
yes.
Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes.
Oh, hello everyone. Nice to see you online. At the moment, I'm teaching at Tashkent State University of Law, and in my classroom, students starting from A1 level all the way to C1 level available. And one of the main aspects of teaching is improving their writing skills, because we prepare future lawyers. We usually teach them how to read, how to prepare legal writing, starting from formal letters, like have to prepare following the correct structure of complaint letters, or the letter of request, for example, or letter of order, or an email of advice written by a lawyer, and different types of the letters for the beginning, to start of the semester. And as we do have a mixed ability students in the classroom, we have to guide them through process writing. I myself studied at Tashkent State World Language University, and I remember we were taught product writing, which I never ever approved. That's why as a teachers of modern trend, we should guide our students through process writing. So when we teach them the body and the structure of the written piece, students should bring the output into the classroom. And as a teacher, we should provide, or even we could arrange kind of peer editing or peer evaluation, where students will be given a time to check their piece of writing, and in the final analysis, students should give his or her own remark. In the next lesson, I ask my students to come with the correction that I strongly suggested. And so time by time, in every lesson, students will get some improvement. In one lesson, if we write the introductory part, in the second lesson, we could move to body part, and the the third lesson, we could work with the conclusion part, or like the ending part. So we can see the development of my students. And every time when I start with constructive feedback rather than moving to judgmental one, my students are very much happy to listen, to hear their positive sides of their writing, and we slowly move to the point where they should bring some corrections in their writing. So it's very helpful by means of motivating my students to praise them, what they have done in their piece of writing, and to give some constructive comment on what points they should really work, and they should come prepared with some extra corrections for the next lesson. This is how it's working in my classes.
Excellent. I can see that process writing implementation of process writing is continuous assessment helps you to give feedback to your students, but also for them to revisit what they write and probably build on it and develop their writing.
Right, to reflect on what they have written, right. I remember my experience from world language as a student. When I wrote an essay, I took it to my teacher, and she put me either 4 or 5, but I never knew that 5 was for what, that 4 for what. Or sometimes I got 3. I never got to explain it. So it dates back like 15 years behind, of course. But we are in now new time, new methodology. I mean, updated methodology, interactive techniques of teaching in the classroom. Yeah, I'm doing my best to bring some build up techniques into the classroom in order to be helpful to my students.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Durdona, for sharing your perspective on this with us. Now we'll move to the next aspect, the last aspect for today's discussion. It's task design and evaluation. In large-scale testing, the people who develop tests, they go through a very comprehensive training in test design. It's not because teachers cannot develop their own tasks. It's because each language test or just educational assessment tool, large-scale test, has its own purposes, and the people who develop these tests have to know how these tasks need to contribute to those purposes. And another aspect that large-scale testing keeps in mind when developing tasks, designing tests, is the test should be able to provide the information for the assessors or for the system to report a grade. Earlier we said it can be a letter, a number, or a short description of the level. So these are some of the things that kept in mind by people who are in large-scale testing when developing tests and evaluating the students' performances. However, in classroom assessment, the situation is somewhat different again. As teachers, we develop tasks and we give these tasks to students for them to learn, but at the same time, we assess our students based on their performance for these tasks. And then after we get information, we use this information to make some adjustments in learning. Like in the case that Durdona shared with us with process writing for future lawyers, if a student needs more support with, let's say, sentence structure, probably that student will get some more exposure to other samples of writing where the sentence structure can be used as an input. And also in many cases, in modern teaching approaches, tasks are negotiated by participants, by the teacher and students, and I'm sure you are experiencing this as teachers now. The tasks are also being negotiated between the teacher and parents in this COVID-19 situation, at least in Uzbekistan. Like as teachers, we ask students to do some tasks, and parents have to take the photos of students writing and send to us by Telegram. And there are cases when parents jump in and they make some recommendations with regards to the tasks. When it comes to evaluation, the evaluation of the student's performance in the classroom assessment is done by the teacher, obviously, but it can also be done by students themselves, like in the self-assessment approach. And also we can also include peer assessment aspect into it, where students sit together and give each other feedback. So evaluation does not have to be done by one person only, as it is the case in large-scale testing. Now, the question again to the audience. Who might be involved in learning assessment activities? What do you think? And also, who might be involved in evaluating outcomes and providing feedback? Let's go back to the Zoom chat box and share our perspectives there. Nadira, it's almost the time. Do you think we should be wrapping up, or we have 5 minutes more to finish?
Yeah, sure, as you like.
Okay. Let's quickly go through these questions and then we'll summarize our discussion. So Dilafruz is suggesting that in learning and assessment, teachers and peers may be involved, yeah? And Durdana, I think your comment is about evaluating outcomes, yeah? Student to student, teacher to student. whole class comments on the performer, yeah. Peer assessments, both teachers and students. School management may be interested in outcomes, yeah. Sardar, can I ask you to join the discussion and tell us how school management can be involved in learning and assessment?
Hello everyone, is it hearable?
Yes, we can hear you.
So school management is interested in outcomes because I know that this might be different in Uzbekistan because most schools are kind of public and they do not compete with each other. But in terms of, for example, private schools, maybe the best outcomes, the best results may bring a better reputation of the school, and so management can check the results of the tests and make a decision on how well students are doing or how bad they are doing, and implement some kind of I don't know, make meetings with teachers and make some changes in the teaching and the learning system. Also among universities, rectors may be interested in the results of students. So if the results are bad, so it means the reputation of the university is also bad. So, but this applies to like testing as exam. But the real knowledge of students as graduates will be shown in the place of work. I mean, in working environment, in real environment, and usually employers, when they enroll graduates, they check their knowledge. They give kind of evaluation to the knowledge they got in university. So if they do well in their companies, it means the university did well, the teaching went well, and everything went well. So, and also school and university management is interested in preparing the best graduates for the future.
Absolutely, yeah. Sardar, I agree with you. One of the examples of the management of the educational establishment being involved in classroom assessment is when a new teacher, a novice teacher with not much experience comes to school or university. It's usually the department heads or zauches, the deputy directors for education. They try to support those new teachers, and they are involved in classroom assessment quite a lot.
Yes, especially in the Uzbek schools. As far as I know, these deputy of directors are really involved in the assessment. They check these so-called journals, right? Mm-hmm. Record books, yeah. And for absence as well, for presence as well, and for marks as well. So yeah. They are involved in this.
Exactly. And also because it's being piloted in Tashkent now, that Kundalik system, online Kundalik system also allows for parents to be involved in classroom assessment, because parents have the opportunity to track their children's progress, and this opens a window for them to be involved in that process. Okay, Sardar, thank you very much. Now we'll move to the summary of this session. Based on the discussions of different aspects of classroom assessment and comparing it with the principles of validity theory that derives from large-scale testing, we can say that the usefulness of assessment in the classroom is meaningful only if it results in improved learning, because the focus is on helping students progress and improve. That's it from me, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any questions, it's always it's already 5:05, and if you have any questions, you can leave your questions on the chat box. Nadira, do you have time to answer those questions?
Well, let's see. I don't know if how people feel. Okay, we have thanks a lot. Yeah, just write your feedback. Yes. Donna, thank you. Oybek. Yeah, we always enjoy your sessions. Thank you. Okay, I think, yeah, we can call a day. Thank you so much. It was a really productive discussions. It was very interactive, and I hope that we all had it like food for thought, right? Maybe. So we started. If you haven't thought about those questions, you can keep thinking about those questions that were raised during the webinar. Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadira, and thank you very much to everyone who participated in today's discussion. If you still have questions, send a message on Mentors Hub channel or to Nadira, and if you find me on that channel, send it to me. There was a question, how can we contact you? You can contact me by email. If you want, I can type my email here, if that's fine. Nadira, can I do that?
Yes, please.
Oops, it's Latin letters that are coming. Somehow I cannot switch into Latin letters. It's only
okay. You can. Could you please write it in the Telegram group?
Yeah, I will do that. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.